All right, well, thank you very much for coming tonight. This is our 7th annual Water Forum, and really appreciate all the support we've gotten over the years. We couldn't do this without our sponsors. We have great guest speakers that come every year. This year, our guest speakers are the organization Alliance for Water Efficiency and the Environmental Protection Agency's WaterSense branch. Then our principal sponsors are the Environmental Defenders. I can't thank them enough. They are our fiscal agent for the program. They provide a ton of support. All the volunteers who've helped out are with the Environmental Defenders. So great organization. McHenry County College provides the venue. Once again, we couldn't do this without them. A great venue. The AV staff help out so much. Kim Hankins from the Sustainability Center is just a great partner, not only to this program, but the county in general. And then the Heartland Realtors Organization is one of our biggest financial sponsors. They help provide grants for all kinds of wonderful programs, and we can't thank them enough for their continued support for this program and all the other great activities that they do. We have a group of for-profit professional sponsors that had tables out here tonight, included Engineering Enterprises, Inc., Geosyntec Consultants, Red Buffalo Nursery, and Blue Stem Ecological Services. And it really is important for us to have these type of organizations having tables so that you can take questions to them and get unfiltered responses. We also have great nonprofit and planning organization sponsors. Of course, we have the McHenry County Conservation District. Many of us live here because of the Conservation District and the open lands that we have available to us. The Land Conservancy of McHenry County is another organization that helps maintain our open spaces. And then we had the Illinois section of the American Water Works Association here this year, and they are important partners in the field of water conservation. And then we want to have special thanks to the Cub Scout Pack 168 out of Crystal Lake, who just did a wonderful job helping us promote the flume devices that we'll be handing out in a few minutes. And then, of course, I think you all have heard this great little restaurant called Duke's Ale House and Kitchen, and just very grateful for their support and the food that they provide. And Duke's Ale House is getting ready to, go ahead. And Duke's Ale House is getting ready to open a new restaurant called Duke's Inferno. It's my understanding that's in Woodstock, so very excited to see what's going on with that. So with that, we'd like to bring up our first speaker. This is Chairman Michael Bueller. He's the chairman of the McHenry County Board, and just really appreciate all the work that he's doing for the county, and particularly the tours that he has been doing with McHenry County Conservation District. It's just wonderful having leadership recognize and support the Conservation District and all that they do for the county. So if you want to come up, Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott, for the kind words. It's truly an honor to be here tonight to really support a resource that none of us can literally live without. So thank you, and thank you to our County Resources Specialist, Scott Kuykendall, and to the Environmental Defenders of McHenry County for asking me to offer a few words before the start of tonight's program. Every year for the past 6 years, the county and the Defenders have joined forces with guest speakers and sponsors to put on the annual Water Forum here in McHenry County College to raise awareness of the need to not only protect our water supply, but to use it wisely. This forum is one of the most public expressions of how McHenry County has taken the lead over nearly 2 decades to ensure that our water resources will be there for future generations. McHenry County gets all of its water, municipal and private wells alike, from groundwater aquifers. And years ago, multiple studies concluded that the more urbanized portions of the county could face future water shortages without more sensible approaches to growth and sustainability. Understanding this, the County Board in 2006 commissioned a groundwater resources management plan to guide our efforts, and the following year created the Water Resources Specialist position that Mr. Kuykendall now holds. In 2009, we partnered with the U.S. Geological Survey to create a network of monitoring wells across the county to track groundwater levels and water quality. In that time, McHenry County has been hit by 2 significant droughts and a 3-year period of very heavy rainfall. Every year gives us additional data to better understand and chronicle long-term trends to help us and other policymakers to make more informed decisions and to give our Water Resources Division and its public and private partners the information they need to continue educating the public. The Water Forum is only one of many ways our Water Resources Division works to publicize the importance of water conservation. If you ever visit the County Administration Building in Woodstock, you'll be greeted by 2 xeriscape gardens bordering the main entrance, featuring native flowers and grasses that thrive in low water conditions and provide habitat for bees and other important pollinators. Earlier this year, Water Resources again partnered with the Defenders to plant many of the islands in the rear parking lot, thanks to the generous gift from the Woodstock Rotary. And this annual event that brought us together tonight isn't the only method by which we reach out to the public. For the second year, Water Resources and the Defenders have partnered to host a monthly talk and tour speaking series highlighting the best management practices, many of which focus on water and environmental sustainability. Many of them are videotaped, and if you haven't seen them yet, you can watch them on McHenry County's YouTube channel. On behalf of the McHenry County Board, I'd like to thank Scott and the Defenders for their continued hard work and dedication to promoting water quality and sustainability. And thank you all for coming out tonight. And thank you to our sponsors who join with us every year to make the Water Forum possible. Thank you very much and enjoy your presentation.
So we're going to be, I'll be the first speaker, and we're going to talk about why water conservation is needed in McHenry County. Oh, it is moving. It's not moving on my screen. Well, I'm going to adapt here. So water is necessary for all living things. You've heard me talk about this before probably, but whether you're in the tropics, the tundra, or the Midwest, water is necessary for every living thing on the planet. And it's also necessary for all economic development. Nobody's going to invest in homes or businesses if they don't have access to safe, clean, reliable, and affordable water. So water is the economic driver that we have for our communities. And we're very fortunate in McHenry County to have access to water. We're actually a fairly water-rich community or area, but that's only true if we protect and conserve it. So when we're talking about water resources in the state, you can see up in the northeast corner that we are very water-rich relative to the rest of the state. Downstate, most of the water comes from reservoirs where they've dammed up streams or rivers. That's a very expensive water source. It encompasses a lot of land area. There are all kinds of water quality problems, and then you can be losing up to 40 to 50% of your water. Are you still hearing me? No? I'm getting an echo, I think. There we go. So, you know, we're very fortunate to have what we have up in the northeast part of the state. And when we zoom in on that, you'll see there's a lot of blue. Now, that blue, of course, is Lake Michigan, but the communities outside of the shoreline really started moving into Lake Michigan water starting in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So it's a fairly recent transition for much of those communities. Before that, they were on groundwater as well. You can see up in McHenry County, all the ground, yellow and gold, those are groundwater aquifers that are being tapped into. So like Chairman Bueller said, we're 100% relying on groundwater for our drinking water in McHenry County. 2 communities in Kane County get part of their water from the Fox River. So Elgin and Aurora get part of their water from the Fox River, but more and more they're supplementing that with water from the deep bedrock aquifer, and we'll talk more about that. But in McHenry County, we're 100% reliant on groundwater. And when we talk about groundwater, it's not just a homogeneous layer. We actually have multiple aquifers that we tap into. We have a layer of sand and gravel. Below that is a layer of limestone. And then we have 3 sandstone deep bedrock aquifers in our region. And we'll go into detail on those. And our water resources are vulnerable to a variety of threats. The ones that we're going to focus on are overconsumption. So if we're pulling water out faster than it's naturally being recharged, the water table drops. We need to have porous landscape for water to be able to infiltrate down and recharge our aquifers. If we're paving over everything, we are going to lose recharge. And then pollution. Anything we put in the air, onto the land, or into the ground can contaminate our groundwater. And pollution protection is actually water conservation, because if we contaminate our aquifers, that water is no longer going to be available. So in many perspectives, pollution prevention is actually the greatest form of water conservation we can do. And when we talk about groundwater infiltration, this is an illustration that I've been using for many years. The engineer named Jim Patchett provided it to us, but it shows how water infiltrates. So water will infiltrate through the ground with precipitation or snowmelt and recharge our water table. But water is not just sitting still, it's constantly in motion. So water is moving downward, and then it's providing a base flow of cool, clean water to our lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands. So there's a direct connection between our surface water and our groundwater. Of course, when we pave over everything, water is no longer able to infiltrate down. So when water hits the surface, it rushes off and goes directly into our lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands. It's no longer being recharged. And then water that does go down in the ground has the potential to carry with it any pollutants. So the same mechanism that allows water to infiltrate down also allows pollutants to infiltrate down. So historically, our agricultural lands would provide an enormous amount of recharge, but over time we've been putting more and more drain tiles in. So just like the storm sewers in our built environment, we're also urbanizing our agricultural areas. So we're providing less and less recharge into our aquifers while we're requiring more and more water out of them. So it's something we need to be aware of. So once again, looking at this map, we're going to focus on the upper layers. So the sand and gravel is our main aquifer type that we have in the county. So this is sand and gravel that was deposited as the glaciers came and went. So as they came down, they would scour the earth, and then as they retreated, they would deposit all the sand and gravel that they created. So in McHenry County, we have a lot of sand and gravel. It's not just a homogeneous layer across the surface. Some areas will have up to 300 feet, some areas will have none, but we have a lot of sand and gravel in the county. And so when it rains or snow melts, water infiltrates down, fills the pore spaces between the sand and gravel particles, and then creates a water table. Below our sand and gravel is a layer of limestone or dolomite. Dolomite is not a porous material, it's a hard, rigid rock, but it can have lots of cracks and fissures. So water is able to infiltrate down through the sand and gravel, and where those cracks and fissures are aligned just right, they can hold an enormous amount of water. So the sand and gravel and the limestone aquifers are the main aquifers that we use in the county. And when we talk about our sand and gravel aquifers, like I said, it's not just a single layer. What we see most often is that you've got multiple layers of sand and gravel interspersed with layers of glacial till dominated by silts and clays. So the sand and gravel is highly permeable, the silts and clays are not. So those are referred to as confining layers. And so you'll have aquifers embedded in between layers of silts and clay. That can be somewhat beneficial because those layers of silts and clay can reduce the potential for contaminants to move downward and contaminate the aquifer. So your confined aquifers can potentially have higher quality water, but the same thing that's resisting the mobility of pollutants also means that the recharge from our water is slowed down. So our confined aquifers are much more susceptible to drawdown than our unconfined aquifers. So it's really important to understand where your water is coming from and what the recharge rate, specific capacity of those wells would be. And we have a lot of private wells in the county. So the Illinois State Water Survey's records indicate that we've got almost 22,000 private wells in the county, and that's likely a gross underestimate of the number of wells that we have. Once we start zooming in, you can really start to get a sense of just how many private wells we have in the county. Most of these are between 8 and 300 feet deep, but we have a lot of wells providing water in the county. Just out of curiosity, who in the audience has a private well? A lot of us, and I know we've got some, Heman is here, they're a local well drilling company. So as I look through well logs, I see all the names of the drillers over time. And when we pull the water out of the ground, it's actually drawing the water table down. It creates what we refer to as a cone of depression. So the water table drops down, and that creates a drawdown that extends outward from the well. And as more and more of these wells are pumping water, if we're pumping water out and we're not getting the recharge, then the water table can continue to drop. And that is what happens. And when we talk about high-capacity wells that are used by municipalities or heavy industry, when they turn their heavy pumps on, they can draw the water table down by 400 feet or so. So they can have very profound impacts on the regional water table. And so more municipalities, since they need such a large volume of water, are relying more and more heavily on our sandstone aquifer. The uppermost sandstone aquifer that we have is the St. Peter. That's largely desaturated, so it's really not used for drinking water in our area. The main aquifer, deep bedrock aquifer that we rely on is the Ironton-Galesville. And so that's the middle aquifer in blue. And the wells that we have going down there typically are about 1,500 feet deep. Now, whereas our sand and gravel and our limestone aquifers are recharged locally when it rains or snow melts, our sandstone aquifers encompass a large area, so they actually underlie many states. But the water we get from that aquifer is actually recharged up in north central Wisconsin. So it can take thousands of years for water to land up in north central Wisconsin, infiltrate down into the water table, and then make its way towards us. So as soon as we start pumping water out of that aquifer, the water table drops. And that's exactly what happens. So this is a exhibit from a study from the Illinois State Water Survey. And the Joliet area has dropped the water table in the Ironton-Galesville by about 900 feet. So that drops the water table down, and then that cone of depression extends underneath the northeast corner of McHenry County. And of course, we're pulling water out of that aquifer too, which then is further dropping that aquifer water table down. So these are maps that were from a study from the Illinois State Water Survey. They create models, regional models. And so the areas shown in orange are areas that are at risk for declining well performance. And so you can see the southeast corner of the county is already at risk for declining well performance. As we forecast out to 2050, we start seeing hot spots that are at severe risk of well inoperability. Now that doesn't mean that these aquifers and our water is going to dry up completely, but once again, if we turn our pumps on and it drops the water table by 400 feet, as that water table goes down, those risks become greatly exacerbated. And so that's what we're concerned about. So as potential water shortages in the deep aquifer are realized and water quality issues in the shallow aquifers from like chloride from our use of salt or forever chemicals, that's driving communities to search for alternative water sources such as Lake Michigan. So the Great Lakes have about 20% of the world's fresh water. So an enormous amount of water is in our Great Lakes. The colored areas that you're seeing on these maps are the watersheds that are feeding water into the Great Lakes. You can see in Illinois, we contribute almost nothing to the water that's going into Lake Michigan, but we take out a disproportionate amount. We really have very little watershed feeding into Lake Michigan. I think Ridge Avenue, if you're familiar with Ridge Avenue and like north side of Chicago, Evanston, and the North Shore, I think that's kind of the high point. And so east of there is what is the watershed feeding into Lake Michigan. All the other Great Lakes states are part of a Great Lakes Compact. So that's the regulatory arm that oversees water withdrawals from the Great Lakes. Because Illinois reversed the Chicago River back at the turn of the last century, we are not subject to the Great Lakes Compact. We're actually under a decree from the U.S. Supreme Court from 1929. We're allowed to divert 2.1 billion gallons of water per day. That includes both the water that's being taken to the Mississippi River from the Chicago River, as well as all the water that we're pulling out for drinking water. It's my understanding that historically we had exceeded that allotment, but because of conservation standards and improved conservation practices and improved building codes, that actually created a surplus of water, and that is why areas like DuPage County were able to get allotments to shift to Lake Michigan water, and that's really the only reason why Joliet is even able to consider getting Lake Michigan water. So Joliet is literally running out of water. They have less than 10 years worth of water left in the Ironton-Galesville aquifer. So they're getting ready to spend $1 billion to run a pipeline to get Lake Michigan water. So these are very real issues that are not just happening out west. These are very real issues here as well. So the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is responsible for calculating the available allotments. And then the Illinois Department of Natural Resources maintains a permit program for allocations. There are certain requirements that would allow communities to be eligible. The one that I think applies to our communities would be where the use of Lake Michigan water would reduce the regional use of the deep aquifer. So the state is very well aware of the challenges that our deep aquifers are facing. Now, if you are able to get an allocation, you are then held to very strict conservation standards. So any community that is getting Lake Michigan water is no longer controlling their own conservation. They have standards that they're going to have to meet. It's very important for us to understand that no matter where our water comes from, water conservation is part of our future. And I am concerned about messaging as communities start to look at the feasibility of Lake Michigan water. I've been doing this work for several years, and when people think that they're getting water from Lake Michigan, they're much less likely to conserve water or prevent pollution. Our water from Lake Michigan would not be guaranteed in perpetuity. Because we're not in the watershed, there is actually a lot of animosity towards Illinois. And I'm just a bit worried that if we were to shift to a dependence on Lake Michigan water that we don't have control of, if that resource were removed for whatever reason, if we build out to that expectation, if that goes away, will we be able to meet our water needs? So I think it's really important for us to protect our groundwater, regardless of where we're going to be getting water from in the future. Even if municipalities do convert to Lake Michigan water, we're going to have well over 20,000 people with private wells that need to be dependent on the local resources. All right, I got the 5-minute warning, so I'm going to try and move quickly. Fortunately, McHenry County has done more to understand our water resources than any other county in the state, and that's why I accepted the position in McHenry County. We are true leaders. One of the great things that we've done, and Chairman Bueller mentioned this, is we have a network of 37 monitoring wells in the county, monitoring water levels in real time. So every 15 minutes, these wells are taking water level measurements, transmitting the data to the U.S. Geological Survey satellites, and then they maintain the data for us. And we're also very fortunate that they've created a website that all of us can use. So please go to McHenryH2O.com and check this website out. When you pull it up, you'll see a map showing where all the wells are, and it's color-coded to show if water levels are normal, low, or high. So within a second of opening this up, you will have a pretty solid understanding of water resources in the county. And we've been collecting this data since 2009, and this is really important, because if you just get a single point, that doesn't tell you much. It's having that continuous data over time that really becomes important. And since we've been collecting this since 2009, we've encountered actually 3 periods of severe drought and then a period of record rainfall. And so we really are getting a better understanding of how the different aquifers in the county react to climatic changes. And I like to point this out because it shows the resilience of our sand and gravel aquifers. We can draw down during periods of severe drought, but as long as we're getting the rainfall and not pumping it out faster than it's naturally being recharged, our aquifers can recover. But it also shows the vulnerability. So we get a period of record rainfall and then we don't get rain again. And this is pretty much the pattern that we see in the wells throughout the county. We are susceptible to drawdown. And so conservation really is going to be key to us withstanding changes in the future. Some of the wells show different issues that we contend with. This is a well right by Prairie View Education Center, south or east of Crystal Lake. So the rapid up and downs are a golf course near the well. So from May to October, they're pumping water for irrigation. And so that drops down the water table by about 30 feet. Then in October, when they turn the pumps off, it rises back up. So once again, it shows the resilience of our aquifers, but it also shows the vulnerability. Of more concern are aquifers that are underneath thick layers of clay. So this is an aquifer that is under about 100 feet of clay. And so the water levels dropped and they have not recovered because it takes so long for water to infiltrate down through that clay layer. We need to improve our regional groundwater models. We have a good understanding of our sand and gravel models, but we don't have a great understanding of our deep bedrock aquifers. Dan Abrams is here tonight, and he's a wonderful scientist with the Illinois State Water Survey. He does the modeling, but we really need to improve the data that we are giving the State Water Survey for their models. So we can start improving the data sharing with the Illinois State Water Survey. Each of our communities have wonderful people managing our water, and as far as I know, they're more than happy to share that data. So we want to make the mechanisms available so that they can get that data quickly. We also want to have a regional study of our deep bedrock aquifers. The better data that they have to create their models, the better the models are. Instead of each municipality doing their own thing and spending millions of dollars on independent studies, we should be pulling our resources together to create a really solid model. Our deep aquifers don't recognize municipal boundaries, so we really need to have a regional water model developed, and we'll be talking more about that in the future. Regardless of which water source we use, water conservation is necessary. Water conservation will strengthen opportunities for economic development. Our water is our economic driver, and if we are conserving our water and using it intelligently, that strengthens our ability to develop. And water conservation will also help maintain the quality of life in the county. Like I said, our groundwater and our surface waters are interconnected, so we have a responsibility to our people and our land and our waters. So that's all I've got. This is my contact information. Thank you very much. We'll have questions at the end of the program, so thank you. I'm going to introduce Ron Burke. Ron Burke is the CEO of the Alliance for Water Efficiency, and I had the privilege to get to know him recently. The Alliance for Water Efficiency is a national water efficiency and conservation organization, and they just had a program this month ago, I guess, so a national symposium on water conservation and efficiency, and we were there with people from throughout the country, and we had a lot of representatives from Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Colorado, who are in dire straits and are very envious of what we have here in McHenry County. Ron and his organization just do amazing work. I don't know any of this stuff by myself. It's not by osmosis. It's because of organizations like this that allow us to have a better understanding of not only what the issues are, but what the solutions are. So welcome, Ron Burke, please.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? All right. Well, it's so good to be here. Again, Ron Burke with the Alliance for Water Efficiency. Just a quick overview of my presentation. I'm going to try to run through a lot of slides relatively quickly. I know you've been, you're getting a lot of information tonight, so we're going to try to simplify it as much as we can. But this is my presentation real quickly. I'll tell you a little bit about the Alliance for Water Efficiency. I'm going to walk you through some of the other benefits associated with water efficiency beyond helping to maintain your water supply. And also just give you a kind of quick overview of some of the more common water efficiency strategies that communities tend to use and that are already being used to a certain extent here in McHenry County, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so just real quickly about us. We are an organization with more than 500 members throughout the United States and Canada. Our members are primarily water utilities, plumbing manufacturers, companies that have a real interest in water efficiency, maybe because they make products that use water, like P&G, which makes detergents and soaps, for example, consulting firms and so forth. We're really the place where water efficiency practitioners, people who work in this space day in and day out, whether that's at a water utility or at a corporation, come together to learn from each other and help to develop policy. So we create ideas, we share resources, we also do policy advocacy, for example, to help encourage the federal government to put more money into water efficiency programs like the ones you want to run here in McHenry County. So if you're a member of the Alliance for Water Efficiency, you have access to all kinds of information and resources. If you're not a member, if you work for a consulting firm or you're with a city that's not a member of AWE, I encourage you to consider becoming one. We have advisory committees you can participate with that really, again, help you network with water efficiency practitioners from all around the country and Canada. We do webinars. I'm not going to go through all the words on these slides, just in the interest of time, trying to move things forward. But these are just some of the ways in which our members are kind of learn from each other. We also have a real focus on putting out actionable research. So we do research on what kind of water efficiency strategies work, and how well do they work, and how do we tweak them to make them better. Whether that's a rebate program or a landscape transformation program, which are very common out in the West right now, where you're essentially replacing turf with something that doesn't require as much watering. How do we make those programs work best? We do research in this space. Our program director is a PhD with a degree in science and economics, for example. We've done some work specifically here in the Great Lakes region. We looked at the economic benefits of investing in water efficiency, especially in the industrial space throughout the Great Lakes Basin. Scott, excellent presentation, by the way. I was just really impressed with all the incredible information you gave us. I learned a lot tonight, and I work in this space, so I was really impressed. But what we found, not surprisingly, to Scott's point, is that when you use less water, you save money, and it's good for the economy, right? And there's all these other benefits too. But that's, some of our research has found that. We did a really interesting analysis on water affordability in Detroit, looking at how water bills are a real burden for a significant portion of that community, and how investing in water efficiency helps low-income residents afford their water bill more so. And this is not just unique to Detroit. It's true all over the country. And another example of something we do in the commercial sector, when you talk about water efficiency, those of us in this audience, we probably tend to think about, what does that mean for my house, right? What does that mean for my home? But the reality is a lot of water is used in agriculture, industry, office buildings, and so forth. And there's a whole world of strategies one can use to really bring water use down in those spaces. You may not be familiar with cooling towers. They sit on top of buildings. They're used to make it essentially offset the energy needs for cooling a building, and they use a ton of water. There are ways to make these more efficient. So this is just another example of the kind of work that we do. We did a really interesting report on this and developed a model to help communities and building owners find ways to run their cooling towers more water efficiently. Okay, I'm going to move on. We also have a water conservation tracking tool that helps those water conservation professionals at water utilities figure out, okay, what's the most cost-effective strategy for me? We need to reduce water by X millions of gallons per year. How can I do that? What's most cost-effective? Our tracking tool helps folks do that. We've got educational resources. The one on top, by the way, is fantastic. If you'd like to do a little plumbing at home yourself, talk to me afterwards. This thing's really good. And commercial kitchens use a lot of water, and there's a ton of low-hanging fruit for reducing water use and cost for commercial kitchens. Again, these are just some examples. We also have a website that's all about how to structure rates. So if you live in a city, and if you tier the water rates so that, if I'm the guy who's like watering my lawn every day for 10 hours, that's a lot of water use. Maybe that higher level of water use should be charged at a higher rate. That's called tiered water rates. And that's a way to incentivize less water use. The basic water use, absolutely, make that as affordable as possible. When you want to go way above that and start to kind of be wasteful with your water use, then you can start to charge a higher rate. And and so that's a way to kind of also incentivize water efficiency. Okay, we have a whole website on that. And then lastly, we have this really cool website where you can go and figure out and look at ways back to your home, to reduce water use in your home. It's homewaterworks.org. So I hope you'll check that out. Okay, I'm going to move on, talk about policy real quickly. I mentioned that we do that work as well. You may not know this, but while the United States and states as well, like Illinois and other states, invest a ton of money in energy efficiency, rightly so, super important, there's virtually no investment of federal and state dollars in water efficiency. It falls almost entirely to local communities. So we're trying to change that at the Alliance for Water Efficiency. We helped secure $400 million for Western states' water efficiency. It was an easier ask, as you might imagine, because the situation is more dire out there. And then another $4 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act. So those are some examples of what we do at the federal level, and then we also work at state level to help states adopt policies that make water efficiency more sensible. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. Talk about the benefits of water efficiency above and beyond water supply reliability. I know that's why we're here tonight, or at least a lot of us are here tonight, right? Because, oh gosh, we're running out of water. Whoever saw the Ghostbusters movie? Ghostbusters, I'm going to just a bit of a tangent. Stay with me for a moment. Who are you going to call when you got ghosts? You call the Ghostbusters. Guess who people call when they're running out of water? It's the Alliance for Water Efficiency. And that's okay, we like that. It's a big part of our job. But we often don't hear from folks until, oh my gosh, we might run out of water. What are we going to do about this? So here we are, we're here to help. But there are other benefits to water efficiency. So for example, you may know this, but Illinois is one of the largest producers of electricity in the United States. I think we're the #1 producer of nuclear-powered electricity. We have a lot of electricity generation. So do we really need to care about energy efficiency? I mean, who really cares? We have enough electricity, who cares? You don't think that way, right? But when it comes to water, I hear this all the time. Oh, we got a lot of water. We don't really need to worry about that. Well, guess what? There's a lot of benefits to water efficiency beyond just making sure the faucet continues to run. So I want to talk about that. But we do tend to think about water scarcity, right? And Arizona's in the headlines, California, Colorado River Basin's running out of water. It's a real challenge. There's no doubt that water scarcity is probably the most important reason to think about water efficiency, but it's not the only reason. We think about drought, right? Well, okay, if there's a drought, now I'm going to worry about water efficiency. Let's flip a switch and all of a sudden reduce our water consumption because we have a drought, and when the drought's over, we'll go back to the way things were. Well, that doesn't work so well, and we've done research on this. What you see here on the left are some additional research we've done showing that you really need to invest in water efficiency and conservation consistently, day after day, month after month, year after year, not just when a drought hits. Having said that, drought certainly drives more interest. This is the most recent drought map. You may recall last year the West was covered in red. This year it's more the central part of the United States, but drought, needless to say, is becoming more common and more extreme because of climate change. And so those seasonal droughts that we tend to experience in the Midwest and places like McHenry County will become more common. That seems to be almost for sure, based on what the science is telling us. So it is another reason to invest in water efficiency, in addition to the fact that your aquifers are being depleted too quickly, as Scott described for us. Okay, so, yeah, and I talked about how energy efficiency is about more than just making sure the lights don't go out, right? It's about let's reduce energy use because there's a connection to climate change. And if we reduce energy use, it's going to help make energy bills more affordable. And the same is true with water efficiency. So this is a fact sheet we have. The link over here on the left will take you to that fact sheet, which describes some of the many benefits associated with water efficiency. It's helping communities manage water supply shortages. Scott mentioned pollution, like PFAS and so forth, that are E. coli contamination. All of a sudden your water supply's been disrupted. What are you going to do? You ask people to use less water, right? It goes better if you're doing that on a consistent basis and really just kind of creating a baseline of less water use. When we do outdoor water efficiency, that can help reduce runoff of chemicals and nutrients into the surface waters. That's another benefit. It helps make water bills more affordable for a lot of communities, especially communities that are growing at a relatively quick clip. It can also negate the need to invest in expensive capital expansion, right? And we've done multiple research projects to demonstrate that $1 invested in water efficiency can offset $10 that would have been needed for supply infrastructure expansion. So I won't go over all of these, but there's a lot of reasons to invest in water efficiency above and beyond. We don't want the water to run out. And I apologize, I'm not sure how these, Scott, I know we did the little We did a last minute kind of merging of the slides, and the format didn't quite come out here, so I apologize for the words being a little funky. But I really want to just draw your attention to the graph here on the right. So, I'm sorry, let me go back. What we've seen is across the United States, even though the population's been growing, total water use has actually come down since roughly 2005. And that's primarily a function of federal and state policies taking effect. The federal government adopted water efficiency standards for toilets and shower heads and faucets and dishwashers and so on and so forth years ago. But it takes a while, right, for those products to be replaced in a home, in an office building. I'm guessing some of you in the audience tonight probably have a toilet. It goes back to the 1980s or even the 1990s, right? And so toilets that were sold back before roughly 1997 use 3.5 gallons per flush. The federal standard that went into effect in the mid-90s is 1.6 gallons per flush. Now, when you multiply that across millions and millions and millions of toilets, it makes a big difference. But there's still a lot of those older, inefficient toilets out there. But the point is, you can kind of see we're bending that curve, right? Because these and other policies are taking effect. Plus, we have water agencies and folks like Scott and Chair Bueller and others who are really, and the defenders, who are helping you all make other changes to reduce water use. And I see this got cut off, I apologize, but the headline there was, gosh, water's so cheap, do we really need to worry about this? And what we're seeing is that water cost, at least across the country, this is not the case in every community, I'm not sure what it's like here in your town, but the expense for drinking water and sewer services is going up at a much significantly faster rate than most other consumer staples. Faster than garbage and electricity and natural gas, for example. And that's a function of aging infrastructure that's now needing to be replaced, and it's really expensive. It's a function of really important environmental protections that have gone into effect, right, to protect our health when it comes to drinking water and protect the environment when it comes to sewage releases. But those are expensive, right? Those cost money. And so even though water is relatively cheap, it can be 1/3 or 1/2 the cost of your energy bill typically. That's not likely to be the case in the future. So it's another reason to invest in water efficiency, because while it may seem like your water bill is relatively small now, that could change over time. And so what we showed is that when you use less water, you could actually not only reduce the water bills for customers, you can also avoid the need to invest in expensive infrastructure down the road. We looked at this in a handful of communities. I won't go over those in detail here, but you can kind of see what we found. Not only did the utility not have to invest as much in capital and go out and borrow a lot of money, but they also were able to lower the customer water bills by investing in water efficiency. Yeah, I apologize. This got cut off. All right. Yeah, this one got messed up too. I'm sorry, Scott, I should have checked it beforehand. So anyway, so some other benefits to water efficiency, right? So I talked about cost and energy and so forth, but we've also found that communities that invest in water efficiency tend to their customers tend to be more satisfied with that. Because typically when you hear from a water utility or an energy utility, it's often like, pay your bill, time to pay your bill. But when a water utility says, hey, we got a rebate, we'll give you a rebate on that toilet, $100 off, you're like, oh, thanks a lot. It can help improve customer relations as well. And you can see some of the other benefits here. So, I'm going to skip this one in the interest of time. So some of the other benefits include, I'm having trouble reading the slide myself, I apologize. When there's heavy rain events, right? And there's the threat of sewers overflowing, especially in communities that have combined sewers, you'll sometimes hear, right, the local water utility will say, or the sewage utility will say, hey, don't do your laundry. Can you postpone that for a while? Because we're trying to prevent backups into the homes and so forth. Well, when you're doing water efficiency and conservation on a consistent basis, you're minimizing the chances, again, for those types of combined sewer backups. Yeah. Okay, and so do I really care about water efficiency if I live in the Great Lakes? Again, we hear a lot about how the Great Lakes region is a climate haven, right? Well, you know, the oceans aren't gonna rise and, you know, take over our land. But you know, we're not a haven here. We are going to see more heavy rain events. We're going to see more extreme seasonal droughts. And for all these reasons, it's important that we be more resilient, and water efficiency can help you do that. Okay, so I think we talked a little bit already about how water obviously requires energy to heat it. There's a lot of understanding, I think, about that. So, you know, heating the water for your shower, for your dishwasher, and so forth. And water heating is actually a pretty significant component of the overall energy bill. So when you reduce water use, you also reduce the energy consumption associated and the energy bill costs associated with heating that water. But, this got cut off too. So when we think about the water energy climate nexus, it's not just about heating the water. It takes a massive amount of energy to pump the water from Lake Michigan or from the ground, to run it through the treatment plant, to purify it, to pump it back out to your house, into your home. It's a massive amount of electricity. In a lot of communities, the water treatment plant will be the #1 user of electricity by far. It's roughly 2 to 3% of all electricity consumption in the United States is simply pumping and treating water, drinking water and sewage water. So when you use less water, you're also helping address the climate challenge, and Illinois is actually ahead of the curve here. We're one of the few states in the country that adopted a policy that essentially recognizes this embedded energy use, this system-wide energy use associated with water. And energy utilities in Illinois can actually get energy efficiency credit when they invest in water efficiency. And we've actually worked with ComEd a little bit on this, which is interesting. So that's pretty cool. So moving on, I'm almost done here. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some of the local water efficiency strategies that are typically used in communities. So, you know, it's hard to see the header there, but water efficiency is about more than toilet rebates. Whenever I go to talk to folks, they're like, oh yeah, you guys work on toilet rebates, right? Yeah, cool. I'm like, well, it's more than that. Sure, it's that for sure. But you know, it's also making landscapes more water efficient. Chair Bueller talked about that, for example. It's also about, you know, commercial, industrial, institutional properties. I talked about the cooling towers, for example. Distribution water loss is a big deal. So all the pipes that take that water from the lake or the groundwater to the treatment plant, to your house, guess what? A lot of them leak, and they can leak a lot. It's not uncommon for some communities to lose 30% of the water that they spent all this money treating to get to your house, and it goes into the ground. Now, if it makes its way back to the aquifer, you know, maybe that's not so bad. But as Scott was telling us, that can take, depending on the aquifer, that can take many, many years, right? So there are simple technologies out there to minimize, actually find the leaks in the distribution system and fix them. Similarly, roughly, I'm sure the EPA, who's going to follow me here in just a moment, will talk about this, but you know, roughly 15% of all the water use in an average household is leaks. Leaks you don't know about. It's significant. So there are also technologies and strategies to help, where water utilities help their customers find the leaks. Scott is giving away some flume devices here in a little bit, and those are really cool devices to help you find leaks, for example. So there's a bunch of things you can do. It's more than toilet rebates, is my point. And utilities typically will kind of go after these opportunities by offering incentives, rebates, subsidies. So for example, out west, if you get rid of your turf, they'll give you X dollars per square foot to get rid of the turf and put in something that's more, requires less watering. You have to meet some requirements, as you might imagine, but that's an example of a subsidy. Direct installation. So this is becoming more common with low-income communities. Often, low-income residents can't necessarily afford a more efficient product, even if you're giving them a rebate. And so communities are increasingly finding the funding to go into low-income homes and apartments and actually pay for the retrofits themselves. They'll put in the more efficient toilet, they'll put in the more efficient shower head. This is often done in combination with energy efficiency upgrades. So they'll go into the home and they'll replace the light bulbs and put in a more efficient furnace and a clothes washer and a toilet and on. And there's more money flowing into this because of the federal infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act. So you'll see more of that happening, and there's potentially opportunities for folks here in McHenry County to tap into that money as well. There's also policy levers that can be used to drive water efficiency. You're probably familiar with like watering restrictions, but there's a lot more to it than that. You can also adopt at the local level requirements that, for example, new construction meets certain standards for water efficiency. Certain products are used in that home. A lot of communities do this, and I'll show you an example of that in just a moment. But when we talk about residential water use, this is kind of how the indoor water use breaks down. You see on the right here, toilets versus faucets versus showers, clothes washers, and so forth. We don't have as much data, frankly, on outdoor water use, which is a big gap in how we address these challenges. Again, this is the indoor water use in a typical single-family home. And we also don't have great comparisons, for the most part, between one community and another when it comes to how much water is being used. What I'm showing you here is actually data that's been collected using the Flume devices, the devices that are being given away for free this evening. And they've kind of compared using their device, because their device can actually quantify the average per capita water use in a residential home. That's what you're seeing here. And so you can see, this is indoor water use only. Chicago's kind of middle of the pack amongst these 15 largest metro areas. This is Metro Chicago, so it's the city, it's the suburbs. You know, unfortunately, they don't have data that's kind of is laser focused on McHenry County. This is Metro Chicago, so take it with a grain of salt. But Chicago is kind of middle of the pack, roughly 43 gallons per capita per day. So if you're a household of 4, for example, you know, that's going to be roughly 160 gallons per day. And then outdoor water use, again, this comes from the Flume data. Chicago there is right around 100 gallons per day. Now this was taken from Q2, so spring and early summer. Obviously the outdoor water use is going to be a lot higher in the summer, so again, take this with a grain of salt. I'm just giving you this as an example. But we're here again, we're a little better than some other communities, but not a huge surprise, right? Because the communities with higher outdoor water use tend to be, you know, in Texas and Arizona where it's much hotter. But when you take that all in combination, you know, a typical household in the United States is going to use around 150 gallons of water per day, and some, you know, larger households, more people, you're going to use a lot more than that. And I talked about, I'm almost done, promise, commercial, industrial, institutional, lots of opportunities there. Folks from the Water Sense program are going to speak next. They have a really great resource to help these particular buildings and industries find ways to use less water. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there, folks. That's the good news. When you think about the challenges you're facing, there's so much low-hanging fruit. Ways to reduce water really inexpensively that not only save money in the short term and the long term, but have all these other benefits that I talked about as well. And so just a couple quick examples. Joliet came up already. You know, sometimes what necessity is the mother of all, what's the phrase?
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Invention, thank you. So Joliet's really feeling the necessity lately, right? And you're probably on a similar path. So they implemented a toilet rebate program. Awesome, great. They adopted a water conservation ordinance to, you know, limit water restrictions. Again, we have research on how to implement these watering restriction programs most effectively. Sometimes they don't work very well, depending how they're implemented, just FYI. And they've also adopted some policies that require, for example, with new construction, that new sprinkler systems are equipped with a Water Sense labeled irrigation controller, and that plumbing fixtures are also in these new construction and remodeling projects are using Water Sense labeled products. WaterSense labeled products tend to be roughly 20% more efficient than the federal standard. So you'll hear more about that in a moment. But these are just some examples of the strategies that communities in McHenry County can use. I've also given you just a quick overview of some of the resources we have available to help support your work. And I hope if you walk away with nothing else from my presentation tonight, just please keep in mind that water efficiency, yes, we need it to deal with the water shortage projections that you're all dealing with here in McHenry County, but there's so many other reasons to invest in water efficiency, just as there's multiple reasons to invest in energy efficiency. And you're going to reap those benefits as you work with Scott, Chair Bueller, the defenders, and others to make this happen. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. Thank you.
So we had a wonderful speaker lined up that I had heard at one of my organizations, the Northwest Water Planning Alliance. And then shortly before the program, he had to back out due to a family issue. So we were fortunate that Veronica Bloody stepped up, and because Veronica Bloody is the chief of the WaterSense branch of the Environmental Protection Agency. So we got the high Palooga here with us tonight. She's out of Washington, D.C., so we're having to do this remotely, but we're very fortunate to have somebody as knowledgeable and experienced with water conservation as Veronica. So I think we'll have a lot to learn tonight. Part of what we've been talking about, what are the problems and then what are the solutions? And WaterSense is one of the main ways that we have a solution. The hard work has been figured out for us through the WaterSense program. It is really just a wonderful, wonderfully organized and run program. I think most people are familiar with the term WaterSense, but we'll find out really what it's about and all the different avenues that it follows, because it is more than just low flush toilets. But they've done all the research and vetting for the products. So it's really a very user-friendly designation to follow. So are we good?
I think so.
Okay. It seems to be offset a bit.
She's, all right, hold on.
And we're running a little bit behind. I'm hoping that people will be willing to stay to the end. We are officially supposed to end at 8 o'clock. We plan on having a Q&A session. So if everybody can at least hold off until the presentation's over, then if you want to take off, so be it. But we usually have a pretty engaged and vibrant Q&A session after the program. So hopefully everybody will be willing to stick around for a little while. So it looks like we're good to go. So with that, Veronica, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I thought about flying out to Chicago, but decided probably this was the best option. So I'm really happy that you guys were able to Zoom me in to McHenry County. And I do also want to thank McHenry County for being a WaterSense partner. We have a lot of partners in the Illinois area, and they are one of them. I also want to thank Scott for setting the landscape and the context for why in your area water efficiency is so important. And I know it's hard with groundwater to really understand what the issues are that you face, but I think he gave a really great presentation to show why it's important in your area. And then Ron gave a great presentation on sort of the bigger, the why water efficiency and the multiple benefits it has. But what I'm going to focus on is kind of giving you the how you can go ahead and save water. So WaterSense's program, I'm hoping, he said, hopefully most of you have heard of WaterSense to date. I'd like to hope so. We started in 2006 as a program that was started up by EPA in response to stakeholders asking EPA to set up a program that was similar to the Energy Star program that you probably all know and love. So our primary mission is to promote the value of water and help consumers and businesses make those smart decisions that are going to help them save water. And we really want to transform the marketplace by encouraging the use and manufacture of more water efficient products and services. And in the greater Illinois area, we do have a lot of our manufacturing partners who are working in that region. Our focus is on these 3 Ps that I like to talk about. The products, of course, is sort of our bread and butter. It's the thing that you'll see in stores, and that's where we're focusing a lot of our attention. But we also want to focus on practices that people can use either at home, in their yards or in their businesses to save water. And then people, the people part is the people like you guys who show up at an event here like this evening. We also have the people who we have as professionals. We have a program that certifies irrigation professionals. So those are the other types of people that we work with. And we work with our partners like McHenry County to help spread the word about water sense and help to give consumers the tips that they need to change the behaviors to save more water. So, sometimes you talk about water, you'll hear Ron and I talk a lot about high efficiency, water efficient products, but we hear out there in the marketplace low flow products. I don't really like the term low flow. It doesn't sound that great, but sometimes people do use that term. The thing I really want to emphasize with the WaterSense program and with the specifications that we put in place is that we're really laser focused on water efficiency, of course, but also on performance of products. And that's because back in the 90s, when they made the change to go to the more efficient toilets through the federal standards, plumbing standards, the manufacturers didn't have much time to make those changes. And so some of those first generation water efficient products didn't work so great. It sort of soured a lot of people onto water efficiency, and it was unfortunate. And so we knew when we started this program, we really needed to focus on the performance attribute to make sure that the products would perform the way people wanted them to perform and do the things that people wanted them to do. So toilets, performance criteria, shower heads, performance criteria. And if you go to our website, you can see we describe for all the products that we labeled the performance criteria that we've looked at very carefully. For the products that we've labeled to date, these are the products that we have. They're found in the residential environment. They're found in commercial buildings, your basic plumbing products that you see. In the outdoor space, we have irrigation controllers, 2 types, spray sprinkler bodies. We had a commercial kitchen pre-rinse spray valve, which is the device you use to pre-rinse those dishes before they go in the big dishwashers. I know I used one quite a lot when I was in college working in the kitchen. We actually, it's sort of a success story. The DOE changed the federal plumbing standard to adopt our levels, and so we basically graduated that specification. So we don't have labeled pre-rinse spray valves anymore because they now represent the federal standard. We also have a program which I'll mention. I think I mentioned it, but we have a homes program that we label homes, and I mentioned also that we have those programs that label certification programs for irrigation professionals. In development, we've got 2 specifications, a reverse osmosis home treatment systems and sprinkler nozzles. And the sprinkler nozzles will go very nicely with our spray sprinkler bodies. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about reverse osmosis home treatment systems because Scott asked me to mention those. I think they are a product of interest in your region because of groundwater and water quality problems that you might be seeing. And we see, more people sort of gravitating to home water treatment systems. And let me tell you, RO systems, they can do a great job of treating your water, but man, do they waste a lot of water as they're treating that water. And so for standard RO systems that you might have in your bathroom, in your kitchen, for every gallon of treated water you produce, you're putting about 6 gallons, 5 to 6 gallons of water down the drain as waste. That's a pretty low efficiency rate. So we issued a draft specification last December to develop a specification to identify more efficient RO units. And so we think that we'll have a specification that will, instead of wasting 5.5 gallons, waste about 2 gallons of water for every gallon of treated water that is generated. And we hope to get that out in this winter. It's still wasting a lot of water, though. I mean, ideally, probably, I don't know that I would pick RO as my ideal treatment system, but, people have different things that they're looking to achieve. And so one of the things that we're doing as we roll out the specifications, we want to help you make smart decisions because there might be other types of filtration or treatment devices that might give you what you need without having to go to the more wasteful RO unit. We'll be putting out some guidance on that. The CDC has a guide that helps walk people through treatment systems. I know I recently had my brother call me and he said, hey, I want to buy an RO system. Like, is that what I should buy? And I said, well, what's the thing you're really worried about? You're worried about all these contaminants? He's like, no, I just don't like the taste of the water. I'm like, well, if he thinks it tastes like chlorine, which to me, chlorine is the taste of health for me. I don't mind a little bit of chlorine odor, but some people don't like it. And I said, all you really have to do is put a pitcher of water on the counter, let it just degas, chlorine odor and taste will go away. or just get a pitcher filter. It's going to be a lot cheaper. It's going to be a lot less operations and maintenance. And that might just help you achieve what you need to achieve. So that's the sort of guidance we want to give people as they're looking to RO units as a possible option. The other thing we want to do is we want to have some information on the label. We find that when we look at these products, they don't have a lot of great information. And so this is an example of a label that we'll have, which will say, here's how the unit does at removing some of these key contaminants that people are concerned about. And here in a real plain language phrasing is how much water this uses and how much water is wasted. So you can look for that, and if you want more information about it, it's on our website. I think Ron probably shared this graph. I couldn't see his slides, but reducing water use at home, just it's important to know like how much water are you actually using. And so this graph on the right shows where most of that water is being used in the home, and the bathroom is still the biggie. Clothes washers are getting more and more efficient with the energy clothes washers, so those will go down as we do these studies every several years. The outdoor water use, I think Ron said we don't have a lot of good data on that, but we do know that in arid parts of the country, while nationally it might be about 30% outdoor water use, in arid parts of the country, it can be like much higher than that. And what we see in the summertime with outdoor water use, you saw in one of the graphs that Scott had, he had a golf course that showed how the water table would decline as the golf course was watering a lot during the summer. Well, the same thing happens when you all water your lawns in the summer. And so water utilities have this peak that they have to build capacity to meet so that everybody can like water their lawns in the summer. And that's why there's a lot of emphasis on trying to come up with landscapes that are more efficient. Retrofitting a main bathroom, this just gives you a sense of the savings you could see if you were to replace that shower head, that faucet, and that toilet in your main bathroom. You could save up to 10,000 gallons a year. It's that water savings, the sewer savings, which are often based, the sewer costs are based on your water use coming into the home. And then the heating savings that you have from either electricity or natural gas, you're going to save the money associated with that as well. And you know, heating water is generally the third highest use of energy in a house. So there is a significant energy use and energy savings that you can get. Sneaky leaks. Ron mentioned I would probably talk about leaks, and he's right. I'm going to talk about leaks. This is a sneaky leak, and this is the sneaky leak that happened to me when I went to work one day. And I didn't realize that my flapper had failed open. And during the course of the day, I lost about 1,250 gallons of water down my toilet. And not only that, but my monthly bill the next month jumped into a higher tier of charges because of that water use that I had. So really, you want to pay attention to that ghost flush that you might hear. That's sort of like minimal, like you hear a little bit of leaking, draining. That water really does add up. And so you want to pay attention to your bills and look for changes in use. And if you have those portals for your utility, go ahead and sign up for that, because often they'll have high water use alerts. And so they'll actually alert you if they see something unusual like this. I didn't have the high use alert on, but I realized when I got home and I heard the water running that the toilet was running, and I went into my portal and saw how much water had been used. So we have a campaign every year, third week of March, Fix a Leak Week, where we try and just raise awareness about the need to look for leaks, and if you find them, fix them. So I think utilities in your area and state are generally always celebrating Fix a Leak Week. We have resources, they'll have resources, they might have events, but you can look for leaks and you can pay attention to leaks any time of the year, so you don't have to wait for the third week of March. So please do that. In the outdoor water use, I mentioned the summertime water use and making sure that you're not, going to use too much. Minimizing to the extent you can through really smart landscape decisions, plants that can survive and thrive on the rainfall that you might be getting in your community anyway, so you can minimize the water that you have to apply to the landscape is a great idea. Periodically, if you have that irrigation system, checking it for leaks and misdirected nozzles, so you're not watering the sidewalk because it's not going to grow. You want to make sure it's pointed in the direction of the plants. You also want to make sure that you're turning it on, your irrigation system on. Sometimes people have it set to go off at 5 in the morning, which is great, but you're not out there at 5 in the morning, so you don't know if the sprinkler here on the right is basically becoming a geyser in the early morning when it goes off. So you want to check your irrigation system periodically and control your irrigation controller. Of course, getting a water sensitive controller will help take some of that load off your mind, but you can always also just pay attention to the timer controller if you have one. I'm a speedy talker, so I didn't warn you guys about that, so hopefully you're keeping up. Another thing Scott asked me to do a little spotlight on is advanced metering infrastructure, known as AMI. And I will say water utilities are changing quite a lot, and things are changing fast, and sometimes it's hard to keep up. But we have seen meters, water utilities moving to these AMI meters, which allow them to collect data on a much more rapid and frequent timing. And so they'll put a meter in, and that meter can send the data to the utility, and the utility can then push the data back out to you through a portal. Sometimes these things can collect water use like every 10 seconds, every minute, every 15 minutes, every hour. The utility can do it at a different range. But the problem is when you get all that data, you have to really figure out what you're going to do with that data, and you have to figure out how you're going to make it useful for both the utility and the consumer. So we do see utilities starting to put in this AMI, and maybe first they were just using the data internally, but now they're trying to set up these portals so you can sign up for them and see how your water use is changing over time. The Alliance for Water Efficiency has done some really good work on looking at how utilities are using these programs, and they did a series of case studies, and they found that in some of these homes, 20 to 50% of the total household use and maybe 500 to 2,500 gallons per household were lost to leaks a year. And when they were finding leaks, you could see 8.5 to 16 gallons per hour. And these leaks would last from 5 to nearly 28 days because it depended on how fast maybe the utility gave them a notification that they had a leak. So I'm not sure who's in the audience. We have some consumers. We might have some utility people, some local government people, and some businesses. But there's some different resources that have been made available. We have some information on our website for if you're a facility manager, how can you use the data that your utility might have through AMI to help you manage water in your facility? So that's a good document to check out. If you're a utility, the American Water Works Association put together a couple of reports that looked about how you build that platform. If you're going to build that portal, how you should build it, what you should be thinking about to make sure that people are going to want to use it, that it's going to be easy to use, intuitive to use, and they'll come back and keep using it. And then the AWE, like I said, they did a report on utility experiences with proactive leak notification, and then also surveyed utilities on sort of what success they saw. And, Ron mentioned about, I think when you hear from your utility and what makes you feel better about your utility. Maybe if I only hear about you when you want me to pay a bill, maybe I don't feel very happy about you. But some of these utilities have these leak notification programs. When they contact you, they send you a text and say, hey, we noticed it seems like you have a leak and you might want to get that fixed, and maybe we can help you get that fixed. People are really appreciative of that, and I think it just builds a better bond and a better relationship between the water utility, the local government, and the consumers. So what does WaterSense have for me? Scott told me this was going to be a pretty broad audience, so I hope I have something for each of you here. WaterSense has a lot of resources and tools, so I'm going to try and hit them by group. If you're a consumer, and I think I can safely say that all of you are water consumers and all of you are getting bills in your home, I think the first thing I would say is make that switch to WaterSense labeled products. They can save you a lot of water. Some of the products that you have might be old and you're looking for a refresh. I will say you can find WaterSense labeled products at every price point you would expect, in every style you would like to see. And so it's not limiting. They're not ugly products. They're not lesser products. They can be beautiful. If you want a $5,000 toilet, I have a WaterSense labeled toilet for you. If you want a toilet that's less than $100, I have a toilet for you. So look for that label, and that's a toilet in action. I went to a restaurant recently, went to the bathroom, and look, I saw my label on the toilet. So that's a pretty cool thing about working the program. We have product search tools, so you can look up and confirm models as well. We have a lot of WaterSense guides, so we have them for indoor and outdoor. These are just a few examples of some outdoor ones we have on how to design and maintain water smart landscapes, checklists for doing that irrigation checkup in your landscape and making sure your controller is working. And then just go to our website and just look around, poke around, because we have a lot of information on our public website. It's just epa.gov/WaterSense. And I'll have that link at the end as well. So that's got you covered for consumers. If you're a facility manager, if you're running a business, if you're running a restaurant, Maybe you have a multifamily housing, your property manager for an apartment building. We have tools for you too. Ron mentioned our best management practices. We do have a document that we first released in 2012, but we're currently updating that in a sort of piecemeal fashion. So if you go to our website, you'll see individual best management practices for all the types of water use in a building. This is just an example here for the toilets chapter. We have a water score for multifamily properties, which is using the Energy Star portfolio manager. And so basically a property manager would go in and they would enter their water use, their billing information, their water use data, and it will give them a score based on where they stand with other similar type properties around the country, taking into account the local climate and some other factors. So that's a great thing because you can sort of do your score and then work on improving your score and seeing how you can and make that better. We have tools and resources, so social media tools, poster templates that a facility manager could take, customize for their own use, and use within their facility. And then we have a lot of training that we do, webinars that are recorded. This is a webinar we actually did earlier today on saving water and costs in restrooms with WaterSense. And so that training is all there. It's all recorded, and so you can watch it anytime. If you're a builder or a local government, we have a WaterSense labeled homes program. And so I would say if you're one of these two people, consider building homes. And if you're a local government or a utility, consider incentivizing the WaterSense labeled homes. Maybe give a credit on tap fees, or maybe give a little bit of money to that builder to sort of offset the cost of certification. These programs will label homes that are certified to use at least 30% less water than a typical home, similar home, and they're third-party certified just like our products are. And we really think that the homes program can help communities that are facing water availability issues but still want and need to grow. On the right, you can see a recent document that we put out, a technical reference manual for homes, which have 20 fact sheets on different aspects of home construction. And the people who are building to the WaterSense label can use that. But if you're just a builder who's looking to maybe do something a little bit more water efficient, you could go in and look at that, understand like why you would want to put in, say, a leak detection system, how you would do that within your home, and how you, if you were getting that labeled, how that would be verified. So I'd encourage you to look at that. It just came out a couple of weeks ago, so it's brand new. If you are a utility or you're a local government or you're a nonprofit organization, we have lots of resources for you as partners. So like McHenry County is, we have more than 2,100 partners across the country. They include manufacturers, retailers, but then the promotional partners are the utilities, the local governments, the nonprofits, state agencies, federal agencies. And so you can partner with us. You get access to a separate website that we have for partners. And we have lots of resources like the ones you see here on the screen that you can take and then use with your customers. You can customize them. You can use them at events. We have, descriptions here of how to have a Fix a Leak Week road race. But we basically mine our partners for activities they're doing, write up those best practices, and share them back out with the rest of our partners. So a lot of resources that are available to you if you become a WaterSense partner. Ron talked about this a little bit, but I think it's really important, and I like to, kind of close out with saying water efficiency is really, really important, but we also know that water bills are going to increase because we have aging infrastructure, increasing costs of energy, all the other costs that we have to have, and the odds are that water bills are going to have to increase. And that can be particularly difficult for customers who have affordability issues, who are lower income or disadvantaged. And so we think that water efficiency can serve as a really good tool to help those customers that might be challenged with paying higher water bills. You want to make sure that they're using water as efficiently as possible so that they won't be as impacted by increasing water rates. So we have a guide that we put out a couple of years ago that talks about how WaterSense partners are integrating their water efficiency programs with their affordability programs. And so we have a lot of good lessons learned. If you're a nonprofit or if you're a utility or local government, you might want to check that report out. And then Ron mentioned a report that they had done looking at water affordability and conservation potential in Detroit. They did subsequent reports on Long Beach, California, and Houston. And I think all of those provide some pretty nice examples and ways to think about how you would look at the needs in your community. Okay, so I think, growing results. Okay, so where we are, 2006 we started. This are our results through 2022. And so over that time, working with all of our partners, our manufacturer partners, getting people to buy products, we estimate that we've helped save about 7.5 trillion gallons of water, which is as much water as the whole country would use in 9.5 months. The energy savings are pretty significant. When you save that energy, you're also mitigating those greenhouse gases that would otherwise have been emitted to produce that energy. And that's the equivalent of taking 5.5 billion trees off, or I'm sorry, equivalent of planting 5.5 billion trees, not taking them down. We have another equivalency. It talks about how many cars we took off the road, but I don't have that one here. Saving that water and that energy means consumer bill savings upwards of $171 billion. And then this just shows you, gives you a sense of where our partners are in the country. And you can see Illinois is doing pretty well. Illinois, we have a fair number of partners in Illinois. So for you leaving, I think I'm getting you pretty close. Smart next steps for you. I think probably all of you hopefully know who your water provider is, but hopefully you can look at their website, sign up for any water leak alerts they have, start checking and see, learn about your water use, figure out where you might be wasting water, what you could do to make sure you don't have any leaks or you don't have any sprinkler issues, how much water you're using, check that periodically and just make sure that nothing unusual is happening. And then if you haven't already made the switch to water sensitive products, think about doing that. And that's it. That's me. If you want to contact me, if you have any questions, if I talked way too fast and you had a question, you can contact me afterwards. But again, I encourage you to check our website. You can always email our helpline, or call our helpline. And then we are on Twitter, or X, I guess now, and Facebook. So that is all I have. And I just throw it back to the room for questions and answers, I think, for all of us. But thank you again for the opportunity to talk to you guys from Washington, D.C. to McHenry County.